Hi guys, welcome back to Nyx Reads. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to this channel if you love watching bookish content, and give this video a thumbs up if you love reading wrap-ups. I know I do. Thank you so much for sticking with me, even though I'm uploading a bit irregularly these days. But today I wanted to take some time to talk about all the books that I read in January and February. I had a pretty strong start to my reading year in a sense that I already found 2 5-star reads. In January, I read 5 books, and I'm gonna go through them in order of lowest rated to highest rated. The lowest rated book with 2 stars, which was a bit unfortunate, is The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels by Janice Hallett. This one I was so bummed about because I thought that this is going to be a 4 to 5 star read, because one of my favorite mystery readers on YouTube highly recommended this one. I just had to realize that the format and the style of the book is just really not for me, but that is a learning experience in itself. The story is about true crime writer Amanda Bailey, who wants to write about the case of the Alperton Angels. Everybody has heard of this fictional case before, where a cult involving a young girl who has a baby that thinks that's the Antichrist is found. All of them are found dead. This case gets opened up again because the baby that was supposedly the Antichrist survived and is now 18 years old. So Amanda is trying to find this baby for an interview. While the story in itself sounds very interesting, this book is 100% mixed media, which I didn't know going into it. I thought that this would be a regular prose murder mystery. So this book consists of only interviews, scripts, emails, texts, and that is it. I learned about myself that I really do not like this format, because to me it lends itself to be extremely repetitive, redundant, and very drawn out. There were so many times where I felt like I just wanted to put this book down and DNF it, but I powered through because I wanted to know what happens in the end. I do think that the author did a great job in characterizing the main characters only through their conversations and texts. I thought that added a layer of skill to it. But in the end, I don't feel that this format is for me. I don't think I will pick anything up from Janice Hallett again, just because I believe the other mysteries that she wrote do have the same format. And so this is no ill will towards the book in itself, but I'm just not a fan of how this book was put together. Next up, I read the infamous None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is the first Lisa Jewell that I have read, and to be honest, I picked this up because I was kind of on this ride of wanting to pick up super popular mystery books, because in December, this is a side note, I actually read Never Lie by Freida McFadden, which was my first Freida McFadden, and it was the ultimate popcorn read. Was it great? No, but was it crazy entertaining and super page-turnery, and did I read it in like 2 sittings? Yes. It was the absolute perfect book to bring to an airport and on an airplane. So I read None of This Is True also on vacation when I was going on trains a lot, so I had a lot of downtime and time to pass, and again, this was kind of a great book for that purpose. In this story, we have our very famous podcaster Alex Summers, a woman in her 40s who has seemingly a perfect life. She celebrates her birthday and meets the very unassuming Josie Fair, who happens to be her birthday twin. They start to get to know each other, and Josie shares with Alex that she's on the cusp of a huge change in her life, which intrigues Alex a lot, enough to agree to make a podcast about Josie's life, because Josie had a very interesting past. When Josie starts to infiltrate Alex's life, she really gets under her skin. Alex finds herself the main subject of her own podcast, because crazier and crazier things start to happen in her life at the same time as Josie reveals these very deep, dark secrets about her past. And at the same time, as the title suggests, Alex is really not sure what is true and what is not. This was also a huge page turner. The writing style is very accessible. It is nothing to write home about, but I do find, without giving you any spoilers, without revealing too much about the stories, I do think that the book seemed a bit tone deaf, because there were a few topics in here that are discussed that are quite serious, and it almost seemed like it was normalizing these red flags, or at least not questioning them enough. At least me as a reader personally, I didn't know what the stance of the author or this book was on these topics, which I don't think is quite a good sign. If I had to rate my overall reading experience based on how fast I read this book, how intrigued I was, it would be a 4. But because of these major red flags in this book that are not thoroughly discussed, I put it to a 2.5 in the end. I am definitely open to reading more by Lisa Jewell. Maybe I'm gonna wait until she releases a few new books, because I've heard from quite a few reviewers that they say that this, compared to her existing works, is actually one of the best, and I didn't quite love this. If I had to compare my experience with Never Lie by Freida McFadden and this book by Lisa Jewell, I'd say that the Freida McFadden is a bit more popcorny, in a way that I already forgot how the book ended. I already forgot what happened in the book, but in the moment I really couldn't put it down. I devoured it, but it was less serious. It was more campy and more just very obviously not to be taken seriously, whereas this one I think was trying to be something deeper than it is, which is why I saw this with a bit more of a critical eye, whereas the Freida McFadden one, I was just like, okay, great, I'm gonna read this book and then not think about this anymore for, I don't know, the next year. So next time I travel, I'll definitely get another Freida McFadden, just because it's such a great way to pass the time. Super fun. So that was kind of a double review right now. But now jumping from a 2.5 star to a 4-star read, I have here Annie Ernaux's The Young Man. So I read the German translation of this. Annie Ernaux is a Nobel Prize winning author from France. And upon a friend's recommendation, I finally picked up not just one, but actually 2 of her books. I'm going to talk about the other one in a second. This novella is nonfiction, in fact. So this is an account of Ernaux's very short but passionate love affair that she had while she was in her 50s with a young man who was at least 30 years younger than her. I found this to be razor sharp, and the observations that she had about the relationship in her life were honestly so spot on and just so interesting to read. It is very poignant, very honest, and more than anything, it just made me want to pick up another book by this author instantly, because to me this was a bit too short to give it a full 5 stars. I give it a 4. Just because it was very successful and it left me wanting more, but it also, in my opinion, was too short to really blow me away. Whereas then afterwards I picked up, what is the English title of this? Annie Ernaux's Cleaned Out. This is her debut novel. In French it is Les Armoires Vides, and this is the first time that it was translated into German. So again, I picked this up while I was over there, and you can tell by the tabs how much I got into this book. So this was my 5-star read for January, easily. Contrary to this novella, this is a fictional story about a young woman, Denise Lesour. She is a student in her 20s who gets an illegal abortion. That sets the frame for the story, but most of the story, I'd say 95% of it, actually happens upon her reflecting on her middle-class upbringing in France and how the sentiments about her youth affect how she feels about her current situation. As a kid, she's just this sweet young girl who thrives in her family life. She's an only child. Her parents own a little shop where you can kind of buy anything and everything, and also a bar, and she's just very happy and feels so lucky that, you know, her parents have 2 businesses. They generate enough money to feed themselves and put her through school and everything. So we follow Denise from being a child to growing up, and as she grows up and becomes more conscious of the class differences in her world, she starts to see her own life through the eyes of the other, through the eyes of people with more money. She has these moments of lost innocence and also develops this self-hatred and being ashamed of her upbringing and her parents, being ashamed of the people who frequent her parents' bars, and she starts to see her surroundings, her life, as this filthy, unclassy environment. She thrives in school academically, but at the same time, this actually creates this rift between her and her parents because her parents are fairly uneducated. So she starts feeling better than them. She starts to hate how they talk at home because it is not classy. But at the same time, she is grateful for everything they're doing for her and allowing her to go to school and not have to work. So that in turn makes her hate herself. It is this very messy, complicated, very emotional story about how she grows up, and it's filled with so much self-reflection. It moved me a lot. If you love Elena Ferrante's Neapolitan Quartet, I think you should read this book. I think this would be really, really up your alley, and also vice versa. If you've read this, then I think you should read Elena Ferrante. So this was a 5 stars. I will definitely pick up more by Ernaux, and specifically this book will most likely make it to my favorite books by the end of the year. And lastly, also in the month of January, I reread or re-listened to Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. So this was once again a 5 star. I read this for the first time like a year and a half ago, absolutely loved it. And so this is a trilogy. I am preparing myself to read the second book, which is why I re-listened to the story just to freshen myself up, because fantasy is always a commitment. I talked about Legendborn numerous times now on my channel. If you've watched my other videos, you most likely have heard me rave about this book before. You probably already know what it is about, but just in case you're seeing this book for the first time. So this is a book about 16-year-old Bree Matthews, who attends an early admission program at UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina. She's dealing with a lot. She just recently lost her mom, and this university also happens to be her mom's alma mater. So there's a lot of feelings that come up. And she discovers that maybe something magical, not from this world, had something to do with her mother's death. She comes across this secret club of Legendborns at the campus that she, in a way, infiltrates to try to figure out what exactly happened to her mom, because she learns very fast that there is indeed magic that exists in this world. And the Society of Legendborns is actually based on the lore of the Arthurian legend. This is a debut that absolutely blew me away. I was just so immersed in this world right away, and it also moved me to tears. This is just such a perfect story, and with a balance between family and also the fantastical. It is great, and I recommend it to anybody who's interested in fantasy. And do not be scared that this is YA, because in my opinion, it does not read like YA. It does not read young. Then in the month of February, I read 2 books, so a bit less than in Jan, and I DNF'd 1 book. Let's start with the book that I DNF'd. So I unfortunately could not finish this book here. It is Ingeborg Bachmann's Malina. Ingeborg Bachmann is an author from Austria, and this is the German original. It is translated in English, so anybody who's English speaking watching can go ahead and try this book out for themselves. Maybe you will like it. I DNF'd this at page 120 just because the writing style was just not up my alley at all. So basically this book lives off complex run-on sentences that are literally a paragraph or more than a paragraph long. To me, this was absolutely unbearable. I had to force myself to pick this book up, and I really did not enjoy most of my experience with it. So at some point, I was like, okay, let's see how many pages I had left, and I was dreading when I saw how many hundreds of pages were left. I mean, this is technically a short book. I think it's 300 pages, but still, I made it only a third of the way into it, and I could not think about reading another 2/3 of this book. It's very unfortunate, but it is just not for me. The writing style just absolutely killed my reading experience. But maybe one of you out there will appreciate the fact that this writing style, this complex writing, reflects the chaotic state of mind that the narrator is in. Our unnamed narrator is in this very toxic, obsessive relationship with a man named Ivan, while at the same time living with a man who is more dispassionate called Malina. So it is this love triangle kind of relationship that is set in Vienna, and the city definitely plays a big part in the story as well. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't make it through this book, but maybe one of you out there is super interested in literature and translation and possibly this sounded good to you, then I would encourage you to try it, but it was not for me. Then I finished a nonfiction book that I wanted to read back in November, for Nonfiction November. It's What White People Do Not Want to Hear About Racism But Should Know by Alice Hasters. This book is about the racism that the author encounters being a Black woman in Germany. I heard a lot of extremely positive things about this book, and one of the main reasons I wanted to read this is because to not just educate myself, but also to be able to put my feelings and thoughts into words whenever I do come across a situation where I feel like this is iffy, this is wrong, but then sometimes it feels like I'm in a lack of words. I do not know how to express why this situation was handled wrongly, or maybe the person shouldn't have said something. So you can tell by the tabbing that I did here that yes, this taught me a lot, and it also put a lot of the things that I think about into words that actually make sense, so I can next time when it comes up in a conversation express myself better. You can also see by my tabs that the first half is definitely more informative, and she speaks about a lot about also like the education system in Germany, and what is a bit lacking in the school system, what is taught and what is not taught. She explains key vocabulary that you do need when you want to confront or talk about racism and microaggressions. While the second half of the book is interesting, to me it is really the first half that I feel like was extremely powerful. I haven't rated it yet because rating memoirs is always kind of, you know, you want to rate maybe the writing style and the way the book is set up, but obviously not the experiences of the author themselves. I think I would land somewhere between a 4 and a 5, not quite 5 stars, because just of my expectations, I didn't know that there's going to be a lot of these like memoir style essays in here. But overall, I do think that this is a book that any German speaker should pick up, because unfortunately I'm not sure if this is translated to English. I don't think so, but honestly this should be read in schools in Germany, really. I do think that this is an extremely hard pill to swallow, and because I've read reviews from white Germans who were basically saying, oh, so I'm like a literal racist, I can't do anything right. But to me that is exactly what this book thematizes. Like, please finish reading this book, because that is what we're deep diving into. Absolutely incredible and a must read. And finally, my second 5-star read of this video is Maame by Jessica Dord. I finally read this novel. It was a buddy read that I did with Camilla from Hasty Books, which was great because it was so cool to swap notes back and forth over a story graph. So thank you, Camilla, for reading this with me. This debut novel is about Maddie, a woman in her 20s who is a daughter of Ghanaian parents, who is also the main caretaker of her dad currently. Her mom spends a lot of time during the year back in Ghana, and her brother is kind of just doing his own thing. She's plenty busy with her job and taking care of her dad, so she doesn't have a lot of time to kind of live her own life until her mom returns from Ghana, and she encourages her to go and move out and move into a flat share. So this is where suddenly so many possibilities are open to Maddie that she didn't really have before, because she's kind of more of an introvert and she doesn't really like to communicate anything of what's happening in her family life at home to her friends or to her colleagues. This is her story about exploring life and the possibilities that you have in your 20s, but while still being held back in a way by the burdens that she has with her family, and also being torn between two very different cultures, because I don't know if I mentioned this, this takes place in London. This book was in fact a reader recommendation from one of you guys, because I asked in a video if you have any recommendations for books where we have a female main character and the story is about her breaking out of her shell and living her life. I just love this trope so much. And one of you guys commented under one of my videos that I should read this book, which is why it made it onto my TBR. So thank you again. That is exactly what this book is, but so much more. Instantly, I really liked the writing. It is so engaging and fluid. It just made me want to keep reading. Even though I had so little spare time for reading, I still managed to go through this book in a very good speed. This is exploring what it's like to be a Black young professional woman, starting your career out in London, which has definitely its challenges, which is reflected in the story. And we're also seeing a lot of the complicated relationship that Maame has with her family, and especially with her mom. This book made me extremely emotional during so many moments. I cried a lot because it was extremely moving, and I was able to relate to quite a few things that were happening in her family. Not to the extent that Maddie is going through, because man, this woman has a lot on her shoulders. But I was right there with her. And I also liked that the heaviness of a lot of these moments is also interspersed with the more lighthearted moments that Maddie has with finding new friends, going out to clubs, finding a bit of romance. I just really loved this book from the first page to the last. It had so many great messages, and I'm just very impressed that this is a debut novel. And if I tell you that I even shed a few tears reading the acknowledgements, that'll tell you how much I like this book. I usually don't really read acknowledgements, but my eyes just kind of flew from the last page of the book through to the acknowledgement section, and I don't know why. I think I just read this book at a very fragile moment in my life. So yeah, I definitely love this book, and this will also be on my favorites list by the end of the year. That was my Jan and Feb reads. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, or if one of these made it onto your TBR. Now I'd be really interested to hear, what is your favorite book you read in Jan and Feb this year? Please leave it in the comments down below. I'm super curious to hear some new book titles. If you just want to let me know that you got to this point of the video, why don't you leave me a flower emoji? Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.